Interesting. Oh, there's double of me. Look at that. I love when that happens.
Yeah.
Well, we are live now, but I have my nice little double screen here, which is a new thing. So we're looking at the studio at the top left here, and I have two of me on the screen now, which is a new feature apparently that I was not aware of. But there you go. I fixed it. See, I know how to fix things.
Infinity Taidu.
Yeah.
Yeah. Welcome to Livestream number 14, the Tairu Studio Lottery Sweepstakes Giveaway Festival Palooza. We're giving away a flute today.
That's right. We're giving away a flute. And to be specific, we're giving away this flute. So just give you a little bit of a toot toot.
Let it rip.
There we go.
Yeah, I was transported. I heard the rattle of samurai swords in my mind. Amazing.
So if you want yourself a brand new Yozan beginner flute, which is hand selected by yours truly, sign up for the membership right now. We'll be doing the draw through ChatGPT at some point during this. So if you're not a member, sign up now. There's a join button right below the video. There are 4 levels there: Shoden Trial, Shoden Lesson, the Chuden Series, and the Okuden Series. You get 1 ticket, 2 ticket, 5 ticket, 10 ticket. There's also a bunch of lesson stuff in there, and I believe someone already asked about that, so we'll go over that today too. But if you want to have a chance of winning this flute, then sign up.
Yeah, and just because it's a beginner flute, let me speak just a second on the quality of these beginner flutes. I played a, quote, beginner flute almost all the way through Okuden level, and it did not fail me. Like, I was able to do everything that I needed to do for my lessons with that flute. And now that flute, I've passed that flute on to one of my students, and I think it will serve him very well also. So don't discredit the beginner flute thing. I prefer to call them student models.
Yeah, it's a hard we've been calling them student models. In Japanese it's soshinsha, right, which is kind of like that beginner flute, or student or novice flute, that kind of thing. But even those kind of words doesn't really do justice to it, because the flute really is a great quality instrument.
I have a 1.6 that's one of his student models, and it's magic. Like, I will never sell that flute. So, yeah.
All right. So we have some questions that are already in the chat, and so today I'd like to do focus on the live streamers, the people who are here watching the live stream. I want to focus on your questions that you have about Shakuhachi, and so on and so forth.
So for those of you that are reading between the lines, that's like, shut up, Linus. Let's answer some questions.
Well, I want to hear you too. Sometimes.
Toki doki.
Toki doki. All right, so I have a question here from the Musicians Roundtable, which is, can you give us a rundown of what's on your membership? Thank you for asking that question. So,
that's a really good question, and it's we're going to need a whole nother live stream.
Yeah, so I'll try to break it down really quickly on what's on there. So if you actually hit the join button, and then you can actually see the different perks that are in there, and it actually tells you what's in every single level. So the Shoden Trial is basically 20 lessons, right? And so for only, I think it's $2.99 a month, you get 20 lessons plus some other stuff as well. Then on the second one, it's the Shoden Series. So it's the full Shoden book. So the same book that I teach all of my students out of, the same content, same material, same things. I just put it into a video format, and you can go through. There's 52 lesson videos on that one. After that, there is... after that, in the Chuden level, you have all of the Chuden lessons, which is about 26 additional lessons. Plus, there is a technique series, which is there's 20 technique lessons, as well as bonus content, bonus lessons, bonus pieces. Then the Okuden series is what I'm working on right now, and there are 30 episodes of that, and I'm only about halfway done of that. So for Tristan, if you sign up for the membership right now, you have a chance to win. And this is not the only one we're giving away, right? So it's not just this one. We're giving away one more in January, and after that, we'll probably give more away too. I just have to go buy more of them. So sign up and you have a chance to win it. So basically, that's what's on the membership. It's all lesson materials geared towards the beginner, intermediate, and even up to the advanced player. There's a lot of advanced pieces in there, like Yamagoe and Daha and so on and so forth. So definitely worth signing up.
Yeah, and for those of you that are wondering, what we're even talking about and like getting started, maybe this is your first time watching one of our lives. I'm throwing a link up right now that will take you to our Ultimate Beginners video that helps you kind of get off the ground and understand what he's referring to and what you would get out of this membership. I think the membership wasn't around when I started studying.
Yeah, I started it 2 years ago, and I'm still working on making the video. So it's a huge project of videos and going through things. And
it's an ongoing thing that's continuing to grow. So the value of your membership will continue to increase as more videos are added. I try to, with my students, I try to get them to sign up for it just so that they have the reference for the pieces that we're working on. And I think it's when I was doing it, you had to go and search for the piece and try and find someone who had covered the piece that you wanted to listen to, and then sometimes you couldn't find it, so then you'd have to cut and paste the kanji that you aren't sure what you're cutting and pasting into the search window, and then you get some weird J-pop, and 3 hours of your life is gone. That's what happened. I mean, your mileage may vary, but that's what happened to me.
Oh, I see. But yeah, it's some people have done extraordinarily well with just those lesson videos. Magus in the Discord it was just done a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, he did have a teacher prior to this, so he did some of the fundamental things, got set up pretty well for him. But I had other people who started with the lesson series on YouTube, and then they switched over to taking lessons with me one-on-one, and I was very impressed with how far they got along. So it works. And for a certain personality type, if you like to, do things on your own and kind of set things at your own pace, this is definitely the way to go.
Yeah, if you don't require the motivation of, knowing that you have a weekly lesson that you're going to look terrible at, which that's me. I have to have the weekly lesson to really force me to work hard. But if you're the kind of person that's self-driven, it's a great way to go, at least initially. And then when you start getting up into the higher levels, you'll realize when the time has come where you're like, I really need to talk to a person about this. You'll realize when you hit that spot. So,
and Robert seems to be getting a little bit of small static feedback. Hopefully it's not too annoying, as I don't think there's anything I can do about it necessarily. I don't think my phone is my phone's right there. I don't know if you want to pull that one just away just a little bit. So, yeah, I'll take that one too. Yeah. Hopefully that will help just a little bit. And if not, well, we're just going to have a little bit of a small static feedback. It's part of the
ambiance.
What they say, the je ne sais quoi of the whole live stream. So, take it in.
All right.
And we have a couple other questions here too. So thank you very much for the first one, Roundtable. Next one is going to be, that would just be a great YouTube name if it's just Roundtable.
Roundtable. I don't know about you, but I immediately think of pizza.
Oh, don't get me started. It's going to be lunchtime soon. Okay, Hitsuji-chan has a question. I have a question. Can you talk about bamboo resonance? How do we get our flute to resonate sound or to resonate more? Okay. So it's a good question, and it's, I think that the one thing I just want to quickly say for this, because this can be a topic that also is a full, dissertation and, a couple hours of lessons.
There are people with doctorates that wrote their book on this.
Yeah. With the shakuhachi, there's a difference between blowing into the flute and breathing into the flute. Right. So when you blow into the flute and you force out the air, you're going to get a lot more brassiness and like higher like tinny and pinny sounds, versus when you breathe into the flute, you're going to have a lot more warmth and that core resonance of the sound. So instead of trying to tighten the throat and tighten the embouchure to push out the air to get a really fast velocity, just think of opening up the throat and softening the embouchure slightly, and you'll have a little bit more resonance. Now, the pitch may fall when you do that, but you'll just have to find balance of how much you can open the throat, how much you can open up the embouchure without losing that pitch. So,
do you want to talk about that flute?
No, I don't want to talk about that flute yet. Can I pet that dog?
That flute's a special story.
That's a flute's a special story.
Okay. It looks like we've got
There's one more from Craig.
Yeah, Craig Rubb. In the daikon octave, should I be able to use the same fingerings as the other 2 octaves? If so, I think my flute... I can't read it. I think my flute isn't up to it, or more likely, I'm not up to it. Well, it could be your flute, but probably not.
So the fingerings in the con register and in the oats register will not work in the daikon register. Yeah. So there is a daikon roll where we play. You can play that note, but typically speaking, we don't use that note. We actually use a different fingering called gonoha. So we actually open up the back hole, and then we get or that note, one or the other. You get either the E, gonohi, or the gonoha. After that, if you open up just to the next hole, right, you're going to get that F sharp, not an F natural. So there's that also changes too. Actually, on the flute, there really doesn't exist that F natural in the higher register, unless you like really, kind of pull it down. But it doesn't resonate there. So that note doesn't exist. If you want to get the E flat, instead of playing that sumeri fingering that you're probably used to, or like this fingering where you have 1, 2, and 3 covered, you actually do a different fingering, 1 and 3 covered. E natural is 1 and 4. Then we have the tsu for that's the F sharp. The G is the same. Re. A flat is a special fingering. And then all the other ones that come after that. So they're all special fingerings. If you go to my website, seanheadmusic.com, and you go to the tab there, we'll post the link in the description. There's actually a free download of my beginner's fingering chart and my professional fingering chart, which has all 3 octaves listed out, so you can learn how to play all of the notes on the shakuhachi. So check that out. But really fantastic question. It is a kind of an assumption of like, oh yeah, I'll just do the same fingering that I've been doing before. And why isn't it working? Well, it's because those fingerings won't work as we're kind of going up in partials. This has to do with what's called the harmonic series. And so as you go up the partials, things start to get weird by the third partial. So
yeah, it's and of course individual flutes vary. So sometimes in daikon you will see on fingering charts 2 or 3 or even more possible fingerings for a given pitch, and you just have to experiment with your flute and see what's going to work for you. All right, I'm going to throw up that link here in just a second, and we do have some stuff on the community tab as well. Yeah,
and by the way, Riss is saying that he has to watch the replay because the Rams game is on right now. Well, the thing is though is that the Rams are going to win. I already tell you, St. Louis Rams are going to take it home. Calling it now, so you don't have to go. You can watch the replay there. The game's just as exciting on the replay.
All right, well, football. I can't follow football anymore. I live in a foreign country. I just can't do it. All right, so there were a couple things on the community tab that I thought were kind of interesting results. Mm-hmm. We have a question, a poll about shakuhachi made of alternative materials, and we asked people what alternative material they were interested in.
Sure.
By far, the overall winner was resin. Mm-hmm. People want to see those 3D printed flutes. Fiberglass was the least, 16%, and I want to play a steel flute, but steel only got 21%. What I'm really curious about is the other category that got 24%.
So like something like carbon fibers, kind of like the Taidu Jinashi that's coming up that we're still working on and finishing.
Or ebonite.
Yeah, ebonite would be a really good one too. So let me ask everybody here, let me ask a reverse question. Normally, you guys always ask me questions, but let me get your response from this. First, if you haven't liked the video, like the video. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. And if you want to have a chance to win this flute today we're giving it away.
That's right.
Join the membership. You hit the join button and sign up. So the question is this. There's a possibility to make the Taidu Jinashi out of resin. But if we make the Taidu Jinashi out of resin, the price skyrockets. This is one of the issues with using resin versus carbon fiber or any other substance. Would you be interested in a Taidu Jinashi? So it's an actual Jinashi flute with the notes fully in, wonderfully tuned, very easy to play, resin flute for about $700. $700 or $800 would probably be about where the price point would be. So if you are interested in that and you would say, yeah, sign me up, I definitely want to have a Jinashi flute. I don't mind paying about $800 for the resin version of it. It's still much cheaper than finding a really good bamboo flute. Then yeah, write it in the comments. We would love to hear that, because if that is the case, then we will make them and we will have them as an option. Just know that they are a lot more expensive than the regular carbon fiber process.
And price wise, when you're looking at that kind of price point, that's about what a Yozan student model is.
Yeah.
So, it's a choice of, you're choosing in that case, it's not an economy thing. You're choosing the material for a purpose, for durability, I would assume.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too is that just getting a really well-made Jinashi flute, like Jinashi flutes just take so much more time to make, right?
Yeah.
And so finding a really good 1.8 Jinashi will cost you $3,000. Right. And you might get lucky. You might be able to find one that's used, and you might be able to pick it up for $1,500 or whatever. But, in this case, resin is such a durable material. And it looks like lacquered bamboo. That's what it really looks like. And it's absolutely gorgeous. The thing is that the price point's higher. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that. If that's something you're interested in, write it in. If it's not, you're like, no, I'm not interested in that at all, then let us know as well.
So if you're looking for a flute to, I don't know, put in the gun rack of your pickup truck,
the resin is the way to go.
Resin is the answer. Yeah. All right, and that actually plays nicely into another thing from the community tab, which is we had, what kind of shakuhachi is your favorite? Giadi, the answers were Giadi, Jimori, Jinashi, and the fourth answer, by far the most popular, 48%. I have no idea what these terms mean. So maybe we should explain that, Sensei.
Absolutely. Okay, so there are multiple types of ways to make shakuhachi. And there are some additional ones on here that are not listed. So, for example, the other one that's not listed is called a hochiku. So a hochiku flute would basically be, there's nothing that's added to the bamboo at all. There's no lacquer. There's no utiguchi insert. It's literally just the bamboo with the holes in it, and you don't touch anything. It's basically raw bamboo.
I've heard you can make them with 3 tools.
Yes.
You need a saw, a ramrod, and a drill.
That's right.
That's it.
And that's pretty much how they're made, right? They're very, very crude. When I talked to Yozan about it, he's like, yes, 1 in 10,000. 1 in 10,000 poles will make a good hochiku flute.
Wow.
And so that's that first one. Now the second one is jinashi. Now jinashis can have inserts and lacquer on the inside of the flute. So the lacquer it's just it's different than the G paste. The G paste is something else, which we'll get into in a second. But the lacquer is just like you would see on regular lacquerware. So I don't have anything on my. Oh, this is lacquer here. This, like the top of this box here, is done with lacquer, and so this kind of hard substance can be put as a thin layer on the inside of the flute, and that just protects the inside of the flute from developing mold or something like that. And it also does clean up the sound. It makes it a little bit more powerful. It makes me a little bit more balanced as well.
It's a really ubiquitous material in Japanese construction because it keeps things from warping and cracking in humidity.
Yeah. And so it does protect the flute very, very well. And there are examples of lacquer work of arrows where the wood on the inside has completely deteriorated, but the lacquer is still there. in contact. So lacquer is incredible. It's incredibly hard and incredibly durable. It's something you definitely want. Now, Jimori and Jiari are the ones that that utilize what's called G paste. And G paste is made with 3 substances. It's made with tonoko, which is basically like crushed rocks or cement. And then the second thing is water. And the last one is urushi, which is the lacquer. So you take those 3 things and you mix it up together, and you create this sort of kind of brownish, kind of sticky substance. And that goes on the inside of the flute for spot tuning, to change the shape of the bore, to fix the imperfections that are inside the bamboo, and whatnot. So now, in the Jimori case, there's a couple ways that they can do it. Sometimes what they would do, for example, Gyokusui the First would do this. He would do the bottom part of the bore as a jiari, and then he would do the top part of the bore as a jinashi. Some people also, like John Kaizan Neptune does this, where he spot tunes the flute. So he'll put, on the longer flutes especially, puts a little bit of G over here, a little bit of G over here, a little bit of G over here, and then puts the lacquer on the inside. And that's another way of doing Jimori. Typically, the Jimori flutes are kind of an in-between sound between the Jiari and Jinashi. So you get a little bit more color, a little bit more power, but not as colorful, or, you get sort of these interesting types of artifacts within the sound for a jinashi, and a lot of those dissipate when you get into the Jimori level. The Jiari is the full bore on the inside of the shakuhachi. The full bore is done with the G paste, and so and that is in order to design a bore frame, or a what is that called? Basically, you control how the opening and the closing works inside the flute, and then you can basically make a flute that is balanced. So all of the notes will evenly speak. It's better for tuning, better for power, and you can. It was really designed for, because of how loud the other instruments are, in order to balance out the instrument between other ones. Now, that's not to say that jinashis can't be loud, but they definitely aren't going to project as loud as a jiari flute. And Robert asked what kind of rocks, and it's usually cement. I'm not sure what kind of rocks they're specifically using with tonoko, but it's I believe it's kind of basically talked as almost like a cement paste.
And so the other sort of question that everyone always has is,
Sure.
like, in general, and I realize a dissertation could exist here, but
Sure.
what's the big difference in sort of tone quality and playability through across that sort of a spectrum from Hachiku to Jiari?
So hochikus are very quiet, but and again, you can have them that do have a lot of power behind them. But they're just very, very colorful, in the sense that there's a lot of artifacts to the note. It's not uncommon to have a wolf tone on a hochiku flute, and the wolf tone only appears when you play it louder, right? And then if you back off and play soft, then the note's beautiful and it has this really soft note, but that's the note it is. Then you utilize the wolf tone to create the color or the effect in the piece that you want at that time.
Harmonically, the wolf tone is usually not the note you're trying to play.
Yeah, or it's like
it jumps into something else.
Yeah, it can either jump, or it like vibrates, and sometimes they can be a little bit flat. But I mean, that's just the part of the thing with the hochiku, is that you're only taking away. You cannot, you're not adding anything to it. Even with the jinashi, they say that it's a process of removing, but people still put in the inserts, like the Utaguchi insert. They still add the lacquer, and that's still adding something to it. It does change the sound away from the bamboo. And it's not to say that one is better than the other. It's just that it's not a complete process of just removing material like a hochiku is, where jinashi is. Jinashi will be very similar to the hochiku, but the sound will be slightly clearer because of the urushi, that's the lacquer that's added on the inside. And a lot of them do have inserts as well, whether it be deer horn, black water buffalo horn, ivory, and that helps to also clear up the sound a little bit, and as well.
All kinds of stuff, acrylic.
acrylic,
Yeah,
different types of plastics, and so on. But traditionally
Jade,
speaking,
I've seen.
yeah, the three traditional ones are ivory, black water buffalo horn, and deer horn.
Okay.
Then the Jimori, the sound starts to stabilize out more, and the flute is still maintains sort of the warmer qualities of the Jinashi, but you get more pitch and volume balance. And then the Giadi is a completely balanced flute, very, very accurate pitch, and really boisterous sound.
Yeah, and if you're looking to play Western music or you're looking to play in an ensemble, the Giadi is the easier of the flutes to try to get your pitch correct.
Yeah, and you could do it with the Jinashi. It's just hard to find a really good Jinashi that's one tube, not cut into half or whatever. It's just very hard to find a very good Jinashi that plays perfectly in tune. That's why for most people the best choice in the start is to do the Giadi. But yeah, it's a big question, and people argue about it all the time, which one's better. And it's not that one's better than the other. They're just different, and they work for different, purposes, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of, it's one of those things that the terminology gets batted around quite a bit in the shakuhachi world,
Yeah.
often without a good explanation like that. So.
And the other thing, too, that has to be considered is that not all G-adis are created alike. You can have a flute that has a lot of G paste in it, and it's just caked on and caked on. And if you put too much G in the flute, or if you use kind of like, some people had tried to make shortcuts and they used like airplane plaster, and then they would just fill the tube, and then they would take a little, I don't know what that's called, but basically it's a long metal string, and it has like a little thing that expands at the bottom, right? And so it expands and contracts in a circular diameter form. And what they do is they just shoop and pull it through the flute, and then you have basically are able to make a flute super quickly, and it has the perfect bore diameter. Yeah, bore. And then it honks really loud, and it's like, wow, this is a great flute. And then the materials on the inside start to crack and break because they don't. The airplane plaster and the G and the urushi and the water don't want to bind and stay together, so they break apart, and then you've got chunks of airplane plaster falling out of your flute when you play. Yeah. So not all Giadis are created alike, and you have to be careful when someone says like, oh, I can have this flute done for you in a month. It's like, that's
how
how like usually for making a flute that's a Giadi, it's if you're like really, really proficient, you could probably do it in 2 months properly, but usually it should take 3 months.
Yeah, and there is one other little element. There are some people, a very small population, that are allergic to G.
Yes.
And so for those people, obviously something that has no G, at least around the mouthpiece, is probably best. Or an acrylic, or not acrylic, I mean a resin flute or something like that is a better option for you.
Yeah, usually once it's cured, it's not an issue.
Yeah,
so,
I've never met anybody who actually has that.
It's only when it's raw and not has not been oxidized and dried out that's usually. But if you're allergic to mangoes, you're probably allergic to urushi. It's the same, like they share properties.
Yeah, and that's again not a terribly common allergy, and it once it's dry, it's basically inert. It's not putting anything under your skin at that point. All right, well that I'm looking back at the comments here, and we may have lost people.
Oh,
in that long discussion.
No, that's not a problem at all.
Of flute types. Coming back to the community tab, there's actually the very next thing was, since you were talking about different flutes for different purposes, we asked people, for you, what is the primary purpose of the shakuhachi?
Okay.
And the answers possible were, it's a musical instrument, duh, spiritual tool, impact weapon, or komaso cosplay. And I am proud to say that impact weapon and komaso cosplay together account for 21% of results.
That's awesome.
So we want to see these komaso cosplay photos. We need that.
Oh, absolutely.
We need that immediately. Join the Discord and post your komaso cosplay.
We should do a komaso cosplay challenge or something like that, and like the winner will like send him $100 or something.
Or like give them like a month of free lessons or something.
Yeah, sure. I'd be down for that. That'd be fun.
That's pretty cool. I'm surprised that the number of people who chose spiritual tool is not higher. But
That's kind of the image you have, though. Like, if you just think of it like pop culturally, even like you sort of think like, oh yeah, people are picking up the shakuhachi because they want to use it for like meditation or suizen, something like that.
Yeah.
But actually, people just like the sound of the instrument. They just want to play it.
And it's a lot more versatile, I think, than people are aware of outside the shakuhachi community.
Oh, absolutely. It's an extremely versatile instrument.
I chose spiritual tool because that's my pastor back in the day said that's what I was. He said I was a spiritual tool.
Craig says that you didn't lose me, but now I'm thinking about mangoes. Oh, man.
Right?
Japan is one of the things that Japan is really known for is their insanely good tasting fruit.
Yeah.
So it's like, you look at these grapes and you go, why are these grapes $40? And it's like, okay, if you see grapes that are $40, you might not want to buy them, but buy the ones that are $30.
Yeah.
And just try it. It will blow your mind.
It's so weird. I as an American, particularly an American from California,
Yes.
I think grapes should almost be free.
Yeah.
Because they're just everywhere. And it blew my mind. A $12 very small bunch of grapes. I think there were like maybe 8 grapes on the vine, and it was $12. And my kids and I ate it, and we were just astonished. Like even my 6-year-old was like, "What is this?" I said, "It's a grape." She's like, "Really?"
And it's like, no, it's not. And so the reason why they're so good is so they do have like Pinot Noir grapes in Japan that grow here. They do have Moscato. They have other different types of variation. But the ones that we're talking about are called Kyoho, which is it's actually a mixture of 2 species, which is a Concord grape and a Japanese grape that I can't, that's escaping me right now. But so it's called the Japanese Concord. And wow. It's like the finest Merlot of wine that you can get into your face in a small little ball.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I would say the same for strawberries. Japanese strawberries are just a different animal.
Yeah. The one thing though is that with Japanese fruits and produce in general, wash it really well. They like overly spray pesticides on everything, and it's not good. Like they use way too much. They actually had a problem where they sent, I believe, clementines to Taiwan, and Taiwan sent them back. And they said too much pesticides here. We are not taking them. So
wow.
By the way, if you haven't liked this video, like this video. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. And hey, if you want to win this flute today, sign up and join the membership. The membership has 4 options on it. First level Shoden Trial gets you 1 ticket. The second level Shoden Lesson Series gets you 2. The Chuden gives you 5, and the Okuden gives you 10. We'll be doing the drawing sometime soon, but you'll have to stick around to find out who the winner is.
That's right. So since we're doing plugs now,
sure.
Would you like to talk about your upcoming CD release?
Yes. So I had a CD release just this last week, which was Tairyu Honkyoku number 3. And that one was an absolute monster of a CD to get. It's the first CD that I did was, I think it was runtime like 50 minutes.
Yeah.
The second one was like 55 minutes. This was an hour and a half runtime. And the way that I do my CDs or these CDs in particular, is that it's one session. I sit down and I play the pieces from beginning to end. No retakes, no edits. It's all just like raw, like as if you came to my house to play. That's what you would hear. And so even on there is one of the pieces, Shinkoku, which is a 19-minute piece to play. So it's a very, very intense CD.
You need your meditation period, you pop that one on.
That's right. If you need your meditation period, you can put that 19-minute piece on.
Your legs will fall asleep before the piece is over.
Oh man, my legs were feeling it by the end of that piece, let me tell you. And then the 4th CD is coming out on December 1st. So mark your calendars, December 1st. I believe it's American, like Central Time, that it's December 1st that will come out. So Japan time, December 2nd. And that will also be up on on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music, wherever you get your music.
And to clarify, these CDs that we're talking about are a 4 CD project that are all Hankyoku, and they're all on the Beast, the 3.0.
Most of them are on the 3.0. There are certain pieces that are not. I also utilize the flute above that, the 2.4. I utilize my 1.8s. I use my 1.6, and I use my 2.0 as well. So there is a variety. It's not all just 3.0.
Yeah, the 3.0 you're in keeping with Watazumi, right? Play the biggest flute you can play.
Yeah, for that particular piece, if it fits.
So, yeah, it's unusual to hear a flute that big played well, in my opinion. There's a lot of
flubby 3.0 recordings out there.
There's a lot of honking on mufflers going on with the big flutes. And I mean, Taimu, it's a cool idea, but there's a lot of just sort of, you have to have headphones on to even hear what's going on, and I don't find that enjoyable. All right. So the other thing that we need to talk about is lessons, online lessons. And the situation here at Taidu Studios is Taidu has been fortunate and blessed to have so many students that there are not enough hours in the day.
There are not enough hours. Yeah.
So if you are a beginner or a low-level flute player and you are looking to take lessons, you can still sign up with Taidu Studios, but you'll be taught by one of our group of Junshihans, associate teachers or assistant teachers, that will get you going. And you will still get to experience the delicious terror of joining, master classes with Taidu.
Of course, they're fun.
But yeah, you still have plenty of opportunity to learn from our studio.
Yeah.
And so if you're interested in that, by all means, hit us up. You can go to Tairu's page, or you could, if you even dropped a comment here, I'll find it and we'll contact you.
Yeah, and the thing is that we're a very tight-knit community on the Taidu Discord. There's two parts of it. There's the public Discord, and then there's the private Discord. So when you sign up with one of my students, or if you're taking lessons with me, you have access, you know all about this. But even on the public front, people are very friendly. Lots of people communicate with each other. People hang out in the practice rooms. People, answer each other's questions when it comes to shakuhachi stuff. My students are heavily involved in that. And then all the things that we do in the studio are really interesting. We do lots of master classes, lots of hangouts, watch parties, listening parties, and so many things. We also do festivals every year as well, where people can come and hang out in person. So we keep really busy in the studio, and so the more the merrier in my estimation, and we'd love to have you. So if you're interested in taking lessons, join us on the Discord. The link is in the description of this live stream.
And the link I just dropped there is a link to one of the Jun Shihan assistant teachers here, Robin Tamura. And he just put up some nice videos just in the last 48 hours.
Yeah.
But he's quite a good player. He's looking for students, and there are several guys that are at that level that are looking, guys and a gal, who are looking for students right now. So if you're interested in learning, or you want to take your Shoden or Chuden YouTube membership up to the next level and get some feedback from a living person, let us know.
And also, we have a bunch of teachers who speak multiple languages too.
Right. So we have German.
German. Robin speaks German. You speak English.
Mostly.
Svenja does English, German, and Spanish. Mike does, I believe, does he just do Spanish, or does he also do like a Dominican accent of it? I can't remember.
Yeah.
But then we also have Hao Yu, who speaks Chinese. So there's a lot of options too. If you feel like you would be much better off in your native mother tongue, we probably have somebody who speaks that language or is getting up to that level,
right,
who can take you on as a student and guide you.
It's not commonly known, but Sean and I both actually speak Southern.
Oh yeah, we do.
So
yeah, if you want to know about how I get that which digits tuned input, I'll help you carry that tune.
You couldn't carry a tune in a bucket.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, so we have a few other things that are on the community page before we dive into this exciting giveaway. I know that the surveys and whatnot might seem a little silly, but they're actually really helpful to us to be able to sort of see what people are thinking and what people are doing out there in the shakuhachi world, and maybe cater the offerings of the studio a little better to you. And so this question was, how are you learning shakuhachi? Mm-hmm. And we have in-person lessons, online lessons, YouTube videos, and self-taught. Mm-hmm. And not surprisingly, YouTube video, 34%, highest response. In-person lessons, again, not surprisingly, it's the smallest response, 16%, because it's pretty hard to, you have to be lucky to live in a town with a Shihan there, that you can go to. What really shocked me was that self-taught is 26%.
Wow.
Now, I taught myself to play ukulele, for example, with having some guitar background, and I had very few guitar lessons also. But I find that the shakuhachi is not an instrument that you're going to teach yourself to a high level.
Yeah, even when I started too, I took out a good amount of time to learn it on my own to make a sound and stuff like that, and then at one point I just was like, "There's no way."
Yeah.
Now then again, there wasn't anything like what I had. What I put up on YouTube for everybody. So
right.
all of the lesson tutorials, all of the systematic way of approaching the instrument, the free materials in terms of fingering charts, access to instruments, reviews of stuff, and answering your question. This never existed when I was starting up. There was very few YouTube videos, and a lot of times it was just more like showcasing a piece, not actually teaching how to do anything.
Right. So
I can see how the self-taught way can actually go a lot farther today, but even then there's such there's little tiny things that can really cause you to get confused easily. Like, for example, well, why does person A pop the roll with 1 and person B pops with 2, and how come in this piece you have to pop with 3, right? It's just like, well, so which hole am I supposed to pop?
Yeah.
And what's the difference between an atari and an osu? And what am I doing over here? And why do I have to move my head? Or why does this person push air out on this note, but I can't push air out on this note? And there's all these sort of tradition things that have come about, which can make it really frustrating to learn even right in the onset.
Yeah, and there is also, of course, the language barrier. If you do not speak and read Japanese, many scores will be very difficult for you. You kind of need, even if you do speak and read Japanese, you sometimes need an instructor to kind of untangle what they mean. Yeah,
because a lot of the writing is, sometimes you get things like, and Ray is on the 3. There's the 3 what? The third hole, the third beat, the after you do it 3 times, or it's after you do these 3 things, then you play Ray.
Right.
And so there's a lot of ambiguity, which Japanese is a highly contextual language, right? They can just say, one word and it actually means a full, sentence. Yes. And a full thought in English.
Well, and when I started, the first time I started playing shakuhachi was in the 1980s, and so we didn't have, the internet was fledgling. It was shortly after the Civil War. The South was in ruins, carpetbaggers everywhere, and we didn't have the internet, we did, but it was just, there was no visuals and very little video, and so the only way that you could hear shakuhachi was in recordings, and so you had to purchase cassettes basically and listen to them, and there were some teachers
wait, you weren't using reel-to-reel?
I actually owned a reel-to-reel infant. Yes, I owned a reel-to-reel recorder and used it for vocal auditions.
Nice.
Jackass. But there were teachers that were actually doing tape-recorded lessons where, like the feedback we get now is just instantaneous. You're on Skype, you play, your teacher goes, yeah, no, right? But what you had to do back then was you had to record yourself playing on a cassette, put it in a padded envelope, mail it to your teacher, 2 to 3 weeks snail mail. Then they would get around to listening to it, and then they would record on the other side of the tape their take on what you had played. And it's particularly difficult in the early stages where, you're trying to play Hinomaru, and
everything's just coming out as...
Yeah, and they're like, okay, and they make a few comments and send it back. And that turnaround took a month or more.
Yeah.
For one bit of feedback.
Yep.
So yeah, it is much more likely that you can succeed self-taught. But I don't want to. Maybe you're the guy that can do this, but I really think that you are better off getting some kind of guidance, even if it's just a YouTube tutorial.
And I think too, the community aspect of it on the Discord is already a huge help. When you're
Yes.
with other people who are playing it too, you guys can help each other out. So it's a great way to.
And there's nothing more discouraging than getting where you think you're doing fairly well, and then realizing that you've developed some kind of bad habit in your embouchure, or some kind of bad habit in your breath work, or whatever, that you now have to undo. And undoing it feels so bad. It feels like so many steps backward, and that's where it's handy to be watching experienced players play, or to at least have some feedback from someone who can say, maybe you shouldn't do that. I had the experience of just kind of, I don't know what happened. I just kind of slipped off the deep end, and all of a sudden I was 25-30 cents flat all the time. And I had this nice, warm, rich, round sound that was 30 cents flat.
That happens.
And I had to fix it, and it was a sad day. I had several lessons in a row where Sean can vouch, I was not a happy camper.
Yeah. And that's a really frustrating one too. It's like also if you like play in Seiza and you're looking down, a lot of times you'll have that problem of being flat versus standing upright, right? So even like now I'm leaning forward in order to be closer to the mic to get a better audio for you all the listeners.
Yeah. So interesting results though, and thank you for responding. And these polls are still open.
Yes.
So if you feel like you want to contribute to it, by all means, jump on the community tab.
And they just help they only become more and more accurate of the sort of the Shakuhachi community as a whole, because as more people join and answer the polls, the more that we can kind of see it's like, oh, actually, you know what, we all like, and I feel bad for the person who's like, when you have like a question on there, it's like, what's your biggest problem with Shakuhachi, and then you answer it and you're like 1%, and then everybody else it's like so I actually am alone on this issue.
Yeah, dude, I'm sitting right here. You never talk about me like that. Every time I answer one of these things, I can almost guarantee you that my answer is the one that gets the smallest response, because I found out that I am an outlier in the Shakuhachi community for the most part. Everyone's like, what's your favorite flute? And I'm like, 1.4, They're like, 2.9. I'm like, all right, whatever.
So we have this flute being given away very soon. So if you aren't signed up for the membership and you want a chance to win this flute, hit the join button now. We'll be giving away the flute in probably about 10 minutes. So
okay. That was going to be my next question, was when you want to do that.
Yeah, so if you're not a member yet, hit the join button, sign up. And this won't be the only one, so if you don't win today, it's not a big deal. There will be another one in January. You can sign up for that one. You just stay on the membership, and when January comes, last Monday of January, and even after that, we'll give away more flutes. So
if Santa Claus doesn't bring you what you want, maybe you can get one in January as well. Yeah. But who knows? Today could be your day.
Boxing Day. There you
go. Yeah. And we are going to be doing this. It's an electronic selection, right?
Yeah, it's going to be done through ChatGPT.
I think my idea was much better. I suggested that we write everyone's name on a little piece of plastic, and then we throw it in the fish pond, and then we let the fish like nibble on them, and then we hook one fish and pull him out, cut him open. The one that is in the fish's gut is the winner. And Sean said that was just too elaborate. So
that takes too much time.
It's budgeting, really. We just don't have the budget.
Yeah.
That's
and actually, where I fish, they actually gated it up now, so you can't fish there anymore. Because somebody went in and was swimming in there, and then they started drowning, and then because they all had to almost die and stuff, ruin all the fun for everybody else.
Dumb people. All right. So the last question that I have for you is kind of personal, because we were listening to a rendition of Shika no Tone.
Yes.
Which had some very aggressive suriage.
Sure.
Okay. So I wanted to talk about what your thoughts on suriage, and of course for those of you that are listening, I'm sure Taidru will explain what that is. Mm-hmm. It's a really common technique, but I'm beginning to feel about suriage kind of the same way I feel about muraiki. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like it's abused. I feel like you're bludgeoning people with it sometimes.
Yeah, definitely can be the case where it's overly used. There's a piece called Akita Sugagaki.
Oh, yeah.
And in that piece, you get a lot of those suriage. So here's an example of what suriage is. So that little slide that happens, that's the suriage. And suriage means slide up. Suri, slide, age, up. And there's a couple rules for it, and it's utilized different by its context. So, for example, in it's used differently in Honkyoku than it is in Sankyoku. Not always, but there's another variation of it in the Sankyoku tradition. So, with that in mind, I'll give you one of the basic ways of thinking about suriage. So typically, suriage is slide up to a lower note. So for example, that first one I did is he to chimeri. So you slide up after the he, and then you're not trying to reach the next note. You don't have to go. That's not the point of a suriage. It's just right before it. And the slide always happens on the hole that you would atari with. So in the note he, when you repeat it, you repeat with the back hole, the fifth hole. So that's the one that you're going to use the slide on. So then you get this, right? And then you go directly to the next note. And now on the next one, just to continue giving you another example, we have the chimeri note. And with the chimeri, I will, since I rearticulate that note with 4, I'll slide up on the 4th hole and then go to whatever note it precedes afterwards. So that's the basic understanding of a suriage. There's a lot more nuance to it after that, and there's a bunch of other rules, but in general, that's what the suriage technique is. If you want to know more about this technique and all of its variations, you can join the membership at the Chuden level and get access to the technique series, where I go over suriage, surisage, and other types of suri.
Yeah, it's definitely a beautiful technique when it's done well, but this is one of my personal axes to grind, which is that these techniques are seasonings. They are not the main ingredient of the recipe.
Yeah,
and I think we do get, some people get really carried away and come hammer that note when they come out of the slide.
Yeah, I can give you an example of what he means by this too, and this is one I find to be quite bothersome.
It's akin to Big Row syndrome.
Yeah, it's much like Big Row syndrome. And actually, it's funny because this is where Big Row syndrome happens too. It's the opening of Hifumi Hachigaeshi, the Hifumi Chol.
Oh yeah.
Right there. That slam really drives me insane. Right, where it should be of a matching of the pitch and tonal colors. Or if you want to use the second hole for it, which is also common.
I mean, that row can still get real big if you want it to.
Not right away, right?
Yeah,
you want it to blend and kind of balance it out.
So on Big Row syndrome, anyway, I would say the main problem is that it's more of an on-off switch than the actual terminal volume.
But even then, like, sometimes you'll get phrases too. Like, I don't think that this is a use of the phrase in Hifumi Hachigaeshi.
Yeah, there's no reason for that to be that big.
No. It has nothing to do with the musical phrase. It's more about ego there than it is about the actual music.
Yeah, I think it's a side effect of the emphasis on robuki.
Yes.
So, like, we've said this before, but, like, to reiterate, robuki, the idea of just blowing ro, is what in Western woodwinds would just be called long tone practice, and you should do long tone practice on notes other than ro.
Yeah.
Right. And so we have a tendency, many of us have a tendency, you know, that guy at the gym who never does legs and never does deadlifts, but he can curl like 300 pounds.
Yeah.
Right.
Chest isn't even big either.
Yeah. Right.
Chest, arms are
chicken legs and massive biceps, and that's it. Right. That's what happens, I think, if you only do long tones on row. Your row gets big and fat and juicy, and everything else can't quite hang on.
I like what Tange Gecko says here. Never skip chi day.
That's great. I actually tell people all the time. I have a 2.1, and for those who know me, I'm a big fan of smaller flutes. 2.1 is the biggest flute I have, and I could play something slightly bigger in terms of like my hand span or whatever, but I just just don't want to.
Yeah.
And I feel like I tell people all the time, my 2.1 is for robuki. It's like deadlifting for your row, and I found it interesting in talking with you about
is my 3.0 like pulling off an Eddie Hall?
Yeah, absolutely. I was about to say, in talking with you about the new CD, you said that the 3.0, you felt that the 3.0 made you better on smaller flutes.
Yeah.
I hate to hear that.
Yeah, I know. But here's the thing: the smaller flutes also make you better on the longer flutes too.
Yeah, I think the I'm bringing it back. I'm making the 1.4 sexy. I'm bringing it back. That's my plan. All right. So, do you think it's about time, Sensei?
Is it about time to give away that flutes? What do you guys think? Do you think it's time to give away the flute now?
I think they're probably,
They're ready?
Yeah.
Have their whiskers been wetted?
I hope so. All right.
All right. So, the Yozan flute is now going to be given away.
All right. So, do you want me to read the whole spiel?
Yeah, I think because usually it says, this is the process that we did, and this is the... No,
yes, okay.
Yeah.
So, to randomly choose the winner based on the total number of tickets each person has. So what we did was we assign each individual a number of tickets, then select one random entry from that total pool of tickets. Given the high volume of names, just kind of to summarize what actually happened. If you're on the Shoden Trial, you have 1 ticket. If you're on the Shoden Lesson Series, you get 2 tickets. If you're at the Chuden Lesson, you get 5 tickets. Okuden level members get 10 tickets.
Nice.
Okay, and so my wife and I both Shoden Trial, 1 ticket each. Keep crossing my fingers. So, each individual entered into the pool according to the number of tickets they have, and we will randomly generate the winner.
All right.
Are we ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, and the winner is, after random selection, the winner is Marcel Adrian, who is an Okuden level member. Congratulations, Marcel.
Can you write that name out in the chat?
Yes, we will add that to the chat.
Sweetness.
And Marcel, you need to drop us an email with an address so that we can get that flute out to you.
Absolutely. And you have a week, right? Because otherwise, if you don't get it out into a week, then we'll give away the flute again. We'll do another giveaway next week. So pick it up.
All right. And I hope that we hear from you soon, Marcel. Congratulations. It's a lovely flute.
Yeah.
I didn't even like touch it or lick it or anything. It's new.
You'll also be getting a Tsuyutoshi with it as well, and it also comes with the plastic bag. So make sure you keep the flute inside the plastic bag when you're done playing.
Definitely.
Blow hot air into it when you're done. I don't know which part of the world that you're in, but I'm sure it should be kept fine. A lot of the people on this channel are shakuhachi lovers, so they want to keep their shakuhachis safe and happy for as long as they can.
Absolutely. And these flutes, the bamboo that's used in these beginner flutes, because they're Nobicon, they're quite sturdy. This is incredibly sturdy for a bamboo flute.
Yes.
But you do have to use common sense with humidity.
Yeah. And here's the general rule for it is, look, if your area of where you live is dropping below 50% humidity, keep it in the bag. Even if you play all day long, like we had this issue happen with somebody recently where they're living in Arizona and they say, "Well, I play my flute throughout the day, but it's still cracked." I'm like, "But you live in Arizona.
Yeah, you got to humidify that room."
It's one of those things. Is like you thought. Look, and it's not that person's fault necessarily, because like you think that it would be fine. People in Arizona have bamboo floors as well, and stuff. And once the bamboo gets acclimated to a temperature, it tends to do okay. Right, but you have the breath coming into the flute. It's being moisturized, has a lot high humidity, and then it dries up, and then it comes humidity, then it dries up. That's what's going to cause the flute to crack. So when you're done playing, it's already humidified. It has a lot of moisture into it. You put it into the bag. You blow some hot air, then hot air from your mouth, by the way, not from a hairdryer, and then
hot moist air,
and then seal the bag up, tighten it up, and then you're good to go.
Yeah, I live in Japan, and I keep all my flutes in plastic bags. I mean, theoretically, this is their native environment, but I still keep them in plastic bags because why risk it?
And technically, it's not, though, because the bamboo comes from Kyushu.
Yeah.
So and so even there, the winters aren't as harsh as they are here.
Since we're coming into winter, at least in the northern
Yeah.
hemisphere, how do you feel about, like, I know you've said before that humidity is more of a problem than temperature
Sure.
for flutes.
Yeah.
And I got a little worried because at the festival, Nick Belando was one of the other instructors who was there, mentioned playing your flute, like pulling your flute straight out of the bag and playing it outside when it's cold is a good way to, quote, pop a flute. And he was talking about your warm breath hitting a cold flute and being able to crack it. Now, his style of flute's a little thinner bamboo wall anyway, but I mean, do you ever worry about that?
No,
I don't either.
I don't, because also I have the lacquer that's it's a protecting the the outside. What's he's more talking about is when you have a very thin lacquer on the flute, and you don't have like the G paste in the way, the actual bamboo itself starts to expand, right? And so that it's much more dramatic in that case. But once the bamboo is weathered, you should be fine.
Yeah, and I just this past week rather was playing outside in temperatures that we're getting down into the high 40s in Fahrenheit, and chilly. And I mean, I thought about it, but I found that the biggest problem was that there's just more condensation in your flute when you're blowing warm air into a cold flute on a chilly.
And that's happening for me too. Not one. But yeah, there a little bit of that condensation buildup. And that's also just because it's drier too right now.
Sure.
Especially if you have like your AC units or your heating units going. Oil heaters not, but like the electric ones, those will dry out the air. So keep your flutes away from that.
Yeah, definitely don't store them in the direct blast of your heater or air conditioner. How do you feel about the flutes on the racks? Like, do you worry about these flutes that are behind? I'm pointing off camera, like anyone can see it. He has a large rack on the wall with flutes.
No, I don't worry about them at all. Again, they're weathered bamboo.
They're used to living here.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that they've been out throughout the spring, the summer, the fall, and so I would worry if like there was a sudden drop of like 20 degrees. Like on a summer day, so it was like 30 outside, and then one day we wake up and it's 10.
Yeah.
Then I would be worried about it, because that's such a huge shift. But other than that, no, not really.
Well, and especially here in Japan with the lack of insulation in the housing.
Yes, that's the issue there.
Because we have the Japanese sort of theory on heat is that you don't heat the whole house; you heat the area you're using.
Correct.
And so when you leave a room and turn off the floor heat or the kotatsu,
it'll drop 10 to 14
it'll
degrees.
drop really fast. And my tatami room at my house is very chilly, and so I worry sometimes about my flutes. But then you remember it gets there over time.
Yeah, I will say the one thing I do in this room is I do leave my humidifier on overnight. So I'll turn off my heaters and stuff like that, but then I'll turn the humidifier on, so that way there's a higher humidity level in here.
And for those of you who maybe aren't familiar with woodwind instruments in general, it may sound like we're being kind of precious about the shakuhachi, but these are the same problems that oboe players and clarinet players and to some extent string players face. Even if you've got your basic $300 acoustic guitar leaned up against a wall in your bedroom, it can also die due to low humidity.
Yes.
So it's standard musical instrument common sense.
Absolutely. Got a couple other questions here, and then we'll call it a day. So Tange here says, just starting Chuden, what's a good place to add flourishes, and which ones are better to start with? Which?
Oh, what a juicy question.
Yeah. Way to give a one that doesn't need a long answer. What I would say here is that go ham on the beginning of it, right? And just add as much as you want. And what you'll start to figure out is like, yeah, that's too much, right? And then, because like what we were saying before with the suriage technique, is that it is a spice on your food. It is not the main dish itself. So if it's on everything, then you're doing it too much. But if it's here and there, then you know that you have a balanced out performance of it. But for right now, you want to be able to put it anywhere and everywhere that you want, or to be able to do that in the future. right? So
Yeah. So, and I think maybe the easiest, like, first enhancement or first flourish to add is double atari, just double taps.
yeah,
And that especially in some of the Chuden material actually fits really nicely.
very, very well.
Yeah.
Dragon Energy, very fitting name for this channel. What do you think about Watazumi? I've heard how he rejected the tradition but still made a name for himself. What with different school teaching the same piece different ways, it seems that there is no totally correct way to play. I love the podcast, by the way. Thank you. Well, I love your name, so thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for the question. Well,
That is a great question also.
And I'm actually a part of the Watazumi lineage, so I'm, of course, going to be a huge fan. I own every single track that he's recorded. I have a lot of his stuff. I've got like memorabilia things as well, so I'm a huge fan. I wouldn't say that he that he rejected the tradition at all. I would say that he was more of a revivalist, and even his way of thinking and the way that he approaches shakuhachi is the same way they approach at Myoan. It's just that he's a lot more eccentric, and he is a soul player. So he is basically what he's doing is he's highly ornamenting pieces, but he's still playing the traditional pieces. He's still playing the traditional repertoire. Lots of Oshu pieces, lots of Echigo pieces, Neizasa pieces, the Kinpuryu school, some Myoan pieces, pieces from Kyushu, pieces from Fudaiji, and the list goes on. So I would actually disagree with that. I would say that he is following the tradition, but he's ornamenting the music in a way that follows the aesthetic class of soul.
And as far as the no totally correct way to play,
yeah,
this is a real issue for me personally because I want to play the totally correct way. It drives me crazy. The way our scores are written, a lot of detail is just not there. It's up to the player, and it's transmitted to you by your teacher or by listening to other players who you admire. And so on one level, there is a totally correct way to play, your way.
Yeah. We've done a lot of I've done a lot of conversations with people about this in terms of authenticity to the tradition, but also authenticity to yourself. The thing is that you're never going to play exactly like your teacher. It's impossible. You can't even replicate your same performance. Now you can get pretty darn close, but every performance is going to be different, and that's the part that's so amazing about shakuhachi is that you should play in that moment. We talk about this instrument being a Zen instrument, but then people want to replicate something else and follow the exact part of the tradition. Well, that's kind of like the antithesis of living in that moment and playing exactly what you feel. So the right way of playing it is the way that you're playing it right now. To be very philosophically kind of like hippy dippy about it, but you learn all the techniques, you learn the way of doing it. This is I think I've quoted him before with Picasso. You learn the rules like like a pro in order to break them like an artist.
Right.
And this is the same thing with shakuhachi. You learn all the rules like a pro so you can break it like Watazumi. There it is.
Or like Bruce Lee said, absorb what is useful, right? But you don't know what's useful until you've learned it perfectly and tried it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Who's the guy? I fear a guy who I don't fear a man who knows 1,000 techniques. I know the guy who knows the technique 1,000
I think that
times
was
over.
also Bruce Lee,
Yeah, it's
wasn't
1,000 kicks a day.
Who knows 1,000 kicks. I worry about a guy who knows one kick 1,000 times a day. Yeah, I think that the other thing to remember, too, is that as you're playing, all of your life experiences are going to affect how you play. Sean was a string player, and so for him, long legato phrases are nature to him, natural to him. Yeah. I'm a singer, so phrases that are sort of I tend to lean towards the con register and the daikon register and sort of soaring kind of things, and the lower phrases are difficult for me. So and it all just comes from our prior experience.
Yeah, and you also want to have experience as well. There's one of the things too that I've what is it? You're not an imposter. You're playing it. Okay. Yeah, you're not an imposter if you're playing it. That's for you.
That's for me. Yeah.
There's always this talk about kind of like the Wunder kid who they have these kids that are sitting in a room for 8 hours a day for their entire childhood and early adulthood just practicing, and a lot of them burn out, and they don't have a really like lengthy long career in their life. And the question is, well what happens? And it's like, well, because they're boring. They don't know anything other than just playing the piano. So
technically fantastic,
yes,
but no feel.
Yeah, because they don't have any life experience to draw from. So it's like, yeah, put down the piano for 5 years and go live a life, and do stuff.
Have a girlfriend or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can't be like playing music about love loss if you've never had love loss. It's just, right? So there it is. All right. Well, I think that puts us way over time today. We actually gave you guys an extra 10 minutes on the podcast. So thank you so much for joining us.
Bills
and as
in the mail.
always, if you are interested in shakuhachi, make sure you like this video and subscribe to this channel, and go ahead and hit that notification bell as well so you get all the updates. If you want to learn even more about shakuhachi, join the membership and get a chance to win another Yozan beginner flute in the month of January, the last Monday at 11 a.m. We will see you guys next week for another live stream podcast. Until then, roll for 10. I'll see you guys next time.